Welcome to this Bulls Digital Update. My name is Paul Peck with Brian Wolf from the UB Athletic Communications Office, getting you ready for tonight's huge showdown for the men's basketball team. They are on the road at Western Michigan, a 7 p.m. tip-off that you can watch on ESPNU and listen to on ESPN 1520. Wolfie, this is a big one, early season, mid-season, whatever you want to say. It's at least the early nominee for the game of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, these were the two teams that were picked to win the MAC East and the MAC West, respectively, in Buffalo and Western Michigan. And the Bulls have shown every bit of what they're capable of doing, starting off 5-0. Western Michigan, they're 3-2. They have something to prove. This game's at their place in Kalamazoo. It's on national television on ESPNU. So I expect Western Michigan to kind of go and punch the Bulls in the mouth early on, show what they're capable of doing, and this is going to be a real big test for UB on the road.
You touched on one of the overlying factors of this game, and Nate Oates actually talked about it after the game the other night. It's a Friday night game, national TV. You don't have a whole lot of those. Friday night means there's not a lot of other competition on the college basketball front, which means people may sample this game who don't normally watch the MAC or the Bulls. National TV gives them the opportunity. And let's be honest, you guys are playing for a lot, aside from a MAC championship, trying to play to put yourself in the conversation to be in the NCAA tournament, regardless of how the MAC tournament goes. What happens Friday will play a very big role in all of that. And I like the fact that Nate understands that and hasn't shied away from that.
Yeah, I mean, selection committee, they watch nationally televised games, and UB's been beneficial because of their early season success that they're on national TV the next 3 Fridays. This is one against Western Michigan on ESPNU, and then the next 2 Fridays are CBS Sports Network. And when you're on a Friday night, as you mentioned, there's less games. You get better officials. You get more eyes on. You get the selection committee watching. When they're going to look at their TVs, they're going to turn on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, and see what the most intriguing game is. They know the Bulls are a bubble team, and they're going to watch and see what they're capable of doing.
You would suspect that there would be members of the NCAA basketball tournament committee who will be watching this game because they've been intrigued by what this team has done and probably want to know a little more about them to know how to make that decision in a couple of months. So, again, the eyes that are on this one, not to add any little more layers of pressure than there already is, but there's a lot of eyes, a lot of very important eyes on this one.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think our players understand that, and I think our players enjoy having that little bit of pressure, but at the same time, they're going to have to treat it like another game. They're going to have to focus on Western Michigan like they have these first 5 conference games, and really like they have the entire season. The losses that UB has had have been to top 50 competition, and they've been preparing. They've prepared for those games. They were in every one of those games. So the Bulls and Coach Oates and their coaching staff, they'll know how to get this team ready to play.
With Brian Wolf from the Athletic Communications Office here at UB, he is embedded with the UB Bulls basketball team all season, and he'll be there tomorrow night in Kalamazoo for the big one against Western Michigan. This isn't the first time that people are noticing what this team is doing. You guys have consistently been in the top 30 in the RPI rankings all season long. What's the latest on the RPI front?
Yeah, today is 29. It's kind of been fluctuating from we got as high as 26 a couple days ago. The other day, I think it was on Monday, or I believe actually it was Sunday, both teams were at 28. The men and the women were both at 28 in the RPI rankings, and there were only about 5 teams in the whole country. We're talking about the Villanovas, the Dukes, the Arizona States that have both their men's and women's programs in the top 28 or top 30 of the RPI. So when you're in that category, that's pretty substantial. Today it's at 29, and there's not really a whole lot you can do with the RPI. It's a computer-based formula. It's going to change every day depending on what the teams that you've played against are doing on a given night. And not only is it what the teams that you're playing against are doing, but then other teams that those teams have played against. So, Cincinnati, who we played, is in the same league as Wichita State. Well, Wichita State lost last night. So that's going to kind of change Cincinnati's strength of schedule and their RPI, which in turn is going to change our strength of schedule and our RPI. So it's just it's a computer formula, but, it's one that has UB right up there at 29. I mean, there's other formulas out there. There's the KenPom rankings where the UB is a little bit lower. They're in the high 70s, but that's still really good for a mid-major program in the KenPom rankings. But again, this is a team that they're going to have to win. And as Coach Oates said, they're going to have to win with some style points. If these are teams that are are supposed to win, the Bulls are supposed to beat by 20 points, well, they better go out and beat them by 20 points.
Of course, with the way the season has gone for the Bulls, being undefeated in Mid-American Conference play, there have been a lot of honors that have come the players' way. Are we at 3 consecutive weeks of MAC East Players of the Week and you've had, 4 on the season by 4 different players, or 5 by 4 different players, right?
Yeah, so there's been 8 weeks of the season, so 8 guys have been named MAC East Player of the Week. 5 of those have been UB Bulls. C.J. Massenberg twice in non-conference with what he was able to do kind of in the early slate. Then right when the new year changed, since 2018 has started, 3 MAC Players of the Week. Wes Clark was the first one, and that was kind of from the last non-conference game, what he did against NJIT. Then it was Nick Perkins after the Toledo-Ball State games. And then most recently, Jeremy Harris after what he did against Akron, and then Miami this past Saturday when he had 23 points against the Redhawks. And now you have Nick Perkins who had 20.
Nick may be lined up to be the next one. Right?
Nick had 26 points on Tuesday night against Northern Illinois. So depending on what he does tomorrow night against Western Michigan, hopefully that streak can continue.
That would be pretty amazing. Now, part of Brian's job is to keep track of all the fun statistics and trends, and when a team is playing as well as the Bulls are, you get a lot of them to have fun with. And I think the one that's the most amazing among a number of them is this streak of 80 points scored in games now, 6 games in a row. It's been over 40 years since a UB team did that, Wolfie. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one team in the history of UB basketball that has averaged 80 points for a season, and that came in the early 70s. I mean, averaging 80 points is hard. I mean, even if you look back at MAC teams, some of the best conference teams that we've had in the last decade, those teams haven't averaged 80 points. The last team to do that was Marshall back in the early 2000s. They're not even in the league anymore. So, I mean, it's pretty substantial for a team to score 80 points that many games in a row. If the Bulls do it again tomorrow night, that's going to be their 7th straight. That's never happened in the 101-year history of this program.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool stuff. Western Michigan coming off a pretty tough loss to Kent State, losing with 0.3 seconds to go. Thomas Wilder, one of the best players in the MAC. What else jumps out at you about the Broncos that the Bulls will have to overcome in this one tomorrow night?
Well, they're a veteran team. I mean, and it starts with their head coach, Steve Hawkins. He's the dean of the MAC coaches. He's been in this league longer than any other coach. So this is a coach. This is a guy that knows what it takes to win in this league. He's led them to MAC titles. He's led them to NCAA tournaments. So I think it starts with their head coach. Thomas Wilder's a great player. You go back to that Kent State game. They were down big in the first half. I don't know.
18 points.
Yeah, it was 18 points in the first half. I think Kent State made their first 8 3-pointers in that game. So Western Michigan had to fight all the way back on the road. They were able to do it. They were able to tie that game up. And then, they lose on this on that last second shot, which if you saw the video, they're basically Kent State got about 3 offensive rebounds, and then the third one went down. So Western Michigan, they're hungry for a win. That West right now is loaded. It's bunched up. Toledo's 4-1 in the league. Their only loss is the one to Buffalo to start the season. Ball State's still playing really well. Central Michigan's been playing well. Eastern Michigan, the record might not show, but they're playing well. So Western Michigan, they need a victory to kind of stay in that MAC West, because that top half is really close right now.
Do you think the guys on the Buffalo team, and I think some of this will come from Wes Clark, who's played in a lot of big games in his career, have developed a big game attitude, have developed the fact that, okay, we're playing another really good team. We're not going to be fazed by it, but we're going to be challenged by it. And that doesn't always happen quickly and ultimately always happen for every basketball team. Are you sensing that the guys are embracing the challenges?
Yeah, I think these guys, they embrace every challenge. And I think there's no game that they go into that they don't think that they can't win, and that includes the Syracuse. They were right there in the final media timeout. Texas A&M, they were right there in the final media timeout. Cincinnati, it was a 6-point loss. I mean, this is a team that loves to get up for these big games, and one of those guys is Nick Perkins. I mean, if you look at some of the best games that Nick has had, it's been against some of the best teams. It was his freshman year against Miami in the NCAA tournament. Last year at Pitt. He loves playing in that spotlight. They know they're the class of the league. It's Buffalo, Western Michigan, and they're going to put on a show like they do day in and day out.
Brian, appreciate it. Have fun in Western Michigan, and we'll see if the Bulls can bring back a very big victory. Don't forget, 7 o'clock tonight on ESPNU, and you can always listen to it on ESPN 1520. We thank you for joining us on this Bulls Digital Update.